How do corporations hold so much power? It's not just about the products they sell or the industries they dominate. It's about the influence they wield in politics. From lobbying to campaign financing, corporations have turned our democratic systems into tools that work for them and not us. I'm Fully Live, and I uncover how power really works so you can take it back. Let's start with lobbying. This is the bread and butter of corporate influence. In 2022 alone, companies spent over $3.7 billion lobbying Congress. Amazon led the pack, dropping $21 million to ensure policies favored their bottom line. And they're not alone. Big pharma, fossil fuels, and tech giants all pour millions into lobbying efforts every year. And lobbying isn't just about money, it's about access as well. Lobbyists don't just influence legislation, often they write it themselves with their own hand. Take the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Portions of it were literally written by corporate lobbyists, slashing corporate tax rates from 35% to 21%. That's a gift for corporations, but it left everyday Americans footing the bill. When you hear about legislation like that, it leads me to think about how just before the new year, the government shutdown that was promoted by Elon Musk, the new bill, they touted it as being significantly shorter in length than what was originally proposed. I just can't help but think about how they're dumbifying this government system, right? This political system that we have. It's like an attack on intellectualism. And the fact that these things are written by the perpetrators themselves kind of go on to show you just how disgusting this is. So, sociologists argue that this kind of influence perpetuates what's known as elite capture, where policies overwhelmingly serve the interest of the wealthiest individuals and corporations, leaving marginalized communities with little representation. Next, let's talk about campaign financing. This took a seismic shift after the Citizens United ruling in 2010. The Supreme Court decided that corporations and unions could spend unlimited money on political campaigns, framing it as free speech. Translation: if you have enough money, you can buy the political outcomes that you want, no problem. The numbers here are staggering. In the 2020 election cycle, super PACs, political action communities, funded by corporations and billionaires, spent over $2 billion. These funds aren't just about getting candidates elected, they're about buying influence. When your campaign relies on corporate donations, who are you really accountable to for voters or donors? And let's not forget, I believe it was a congressional investigation revealed very recently that Supreme Court Justices Thomas and Alito received millions of dollars of donations in cars, gifts, vacations, whatever you whatever you can think of. They were gifted these things for favorable court cases, for favorable court outcomes. Now, if this is happening in the Supreme Court, where we have justices that have lifetime terms, what do you think is happening in legislation or in the executive branch? It's a really big problem that needs to be handled, and it can only be handled by repealing the Citizens United ruling. Neuroscientists have found that repeated exposure to political ads, especially those funded by corporations, can actually shape voter behavior by exploiting our cognitive biases. Ads are crafted to trigger emotional responses like fear or hope that override rational thinking. This makes me think about how in the 2024 election, Elon Musk spent, I think, $20 million in political ads in the small county in Pennsylvania, in a small county of swing voters. Now, he spent, I think, about $10 million on an ad that was pro-Palestine and $10 million on an ad that was pro-Israel, pro-Zionist movement. And can you imagine living in a small rural town, being inundated with messages that only affirm your actual beliefs? You can see how dangerous it is to give this sort of neurological advantage to a man that has over $400 billion to spend. And then there's the revolving door between corporations and government. Nearly half of all federal regulators go on to work for the industries they once oversaw. For example, Jay Clayton Trump's SEC chair was a lawyer who represented Goldman Sachs and other Wall Street firms before regulating them. How does that make sense? And after leaving office, he returned to private practice representing those same firms. They're doing it right in front of our faces. But this isn't new. The revolving door dates back to the Gilded Age, when industrialists like J.P. Morgan had direct influence over government policy itself. What's changed today is the scale. Today, industries from finance to tech have entire ecosystems in their workforce designed to ensure favorable treatment from lawmakers. Finally, let's talk about media's influence. Media consolidation has put narratives in corporate hands. 6 companies, Disney, Comcast, Warner Brothers Discovery, and Paramount Global, and Sony, and Fox control 90% of US media. That means what you read and watch and even believe is often shaped by corporate interests. The agenda-setting theory in media studies explains how those in control of media determine what issues are considered important by deciding what gets covered and how it shapes public opinion and distracts from stories that challenge the status quo. But here's the thing. This system wasn't built overnight. It's the result of decades of deliberate policies and tactics designed to enrich corporate power. And while it may feel overwhelming, there are cracks in the armor. For example, the EU has taken a big stand on big tech. Google was fined over $10 billion for antitrust violations, forcing them to change their practices in Europe. And here in the US, the great Lina Khan and the FTC are leading the charge to break up monopolies and restore competition. So, what can you do? First, support candidates who refuse corporate donations. Don't let them just find you. You need to actively seek the people in office and the people seeking office that care about the same things that you do. That is your job as a citizen. Look for grassroots funded campaigns that prioritize people over profits. Second, stay informed. The more you understand how these systems work, the harder it is for corporations to manipulate them. It's so much easier to do dirt and dark when people don't know what it looks like or what to look for. Third, demand transparency, yo. Push for campaign finance reform and support antitrust legislation. Corporate power didn't take over politics by accident, and it won't be undone without a fight. The more we understand how this system works, the more we can disrupt it and take back control. Next time, we'll talk about how antitrust laws are being used to push back against monopolies and why it's one of the most important fights of our time. If this resonated with you, if you learned anything at all, then please share it, like it, and comment what you've learned today, what inspired you, and let's keep exposing the truth together.